I'm Michael Klam, and this is Conversations with Poets here with Robt O'Sullivan, the founder of San Diego Poetry Slam, and now anthologist, publisher, organizer, host. It's an honor for me to have you here, Robert, because when I first came to San Diego, I was looking for community, and you gave me the first opportunities to get up to a microphone and perform. And I remember Java Joe's, right? Rendezvous,
yes.
and the San Diego Slam. How did all that come about? Like you were initially a musician, right? And then you went to poetry, and then you became all of this.
Right. Well, so I was actually never a performing musician here in San Diego. I had been one in Colorado, Virginia, where I'm from. By the time I got here, I just kind of settled into a job routine. But I discovered poetry, or rather just discovered that I really wanted to write more poetry in the mid-90s and started attending Chris Vanoy's reading at the WikiUp in University Heights, and then was also going down to Ocean Beach. Lizzie Wan had a reading down there at Java Joe's. Lizzie was ready to move on to hosting the house concerts scene. It was just starting up then. And so she asked me to take over Java Joe's reading. And that was around 1997.
Was it a natural fit for you to go that way because you started performing for audiences?
I wasn't so sure why she picked me. Yeah, I was a little apprehensive, but she said, I wanted you to take this over because you're here every week. You're you're always here, so the flow, and so I said, okay, well, I'll give it a shot.
I know what you saw because a lot of what I've seen, hosts that put together events and do a great job with it, they model those events and they're hosting after you. You're very welcoming, and you're always present. So in terms of doing much for the community over the years, you're kind of it as a mentor, whether you knew it or not. You are certainly a mentor for a lot of us.
Well, thank you. I would tell people who are thinking about hosting public events, A, don't make it about you. And B, it's got to be a cooperative of some sort,
Indeed. So when you are writing poetry, or even when you're listening to poetry, do you have that sort of inner musician thinking about what the sounds are, what the rhythms are? Yeah. Do you have a preference for a style and a rhythm of poetry?
I mean, when I was in high school, I started writing poems based on just what I was hearing from Paul Simon and Joni Mitchell. Well, in college, Joni Mitchell, and I was writing my own music, and so I've never let that go. Hopefully, if I read something today, maybe you'll hear that. I still strive for that.
I do,
without rhyming.
Right. I do. I hear a rhythm. I hear music in your poetry, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's part of your, one's, as visual artists, which I am not, but representing the gallery, we have quite a few visual artists that have branched off into poetry, and their take is so different than a musician's take. On what they want to put down on the page. So it gets really interesting, this cross-fertilization.
What do you notice there? Because a musician would naturally find through those lyrics a way to move into poetry, maybe for the page, maybe for performance. And I think you said once that it was more terrifying, there was more fear in getting up to the microphone to present your own poem than it was to get up and sing a song.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, so the music industry, at least when I was coming up, was geared towards, 3.5 minutes. And then, so that kind of was a natural fit for me with slam. It's all about, getting the story out and down as succinctly as possible, I mean, there are the poets Ginsberg, who will go on for pages on a theme, but for the most part, anthologies, we're looking for, succinctness.
Do you still have the same love for Poetry Slam and the same appreciation as you did back in the day?
Well, I think I do, yes, absolutely. As long as it's not too formulaic and stays kind of, unique. It's got to have some authenticity to
Right,
it.
right.
And that's what I'm looking for. But yeah, I don't know that I would be a good judge anymore because my standards have, maybe gotten a little higher than, because slam attracts a younger group, and they're just breaking out. So, I want to give them space to discover themselves.
Right. When you founded Slam, you reached out to National Poetry NPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had to get certified, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So to make the city of San Diego an official Slam city that could go to nationals, there was a process.
Right. So, Jennifer Guerin is one of my oldest friends here in San Diego, and she was a librarian. She's recently retired. So she worked right here at Central.
Yeah.
And she had the idea, and she found the venue. She really wanted to pursue bringing slam to San Diego. She found us a venue, but I had the networking and I had the so to speak infrastructure in place, with an email list and to get people to come, and so yeah, it kind of branched off from there. We were told right away, hey, you don't just become part of the national scene. You have to, prove yourself. So we'll give you 6 months. You send us the number of attendees, some documentation, et cetera, et cetera. And then you'll be on the road to certification. So once you're certified, you can start taking part in events like regional events up at Big Sur, and of course then your national events, and start competing with other cities, do some kind of intra-city hosting.
Yeah, Mark Smith, the originator, the National Poetry Slam originator, he said the point is not the points, right? Was part of you in creating a space like that for slam poets to come up, not just that they compete and make a name for themselves when we go to another city, but to get up and express themselves?
Absolutely, yeah. So first of all, I wanted it always to be in an all-ages venue so we could get high school students, and that was really, really important to us when we had to move, because we actually outgrew the Rendezvous. When we moved over to the Urban Grind in Hillcrest, people had said, hey, let's have it at a bar. That would be so cool down in, we didn't have, what do they call this, East Village?
Yeah.
We didn't even have that back then, no.
Yeah.
But anyway, down the Gas Lamp or something, and I said, no, it's got to be, all ages. But yeah, I would constantly tell people, hey, bring the same poem back every month. It's fine, but revise it, and watch it go up the charts, so to speak, until it finally places in the top 3. It'll happen, you just got to be diligent.
Yeah, there you go, mentoring again, right?
Right.
When you were writing, was your progression lyrics to poetry slam?
Yeah.
It was straight from, so it was always performance.
Yeah.
And when you were writing back then, were you writing from a place of, I want to please, I want to entertain, or were you writing for an audience when you sat down to write?
Chris Benoit was pretty influential on all of us back then, in that he would not have a sign-up board. And so he encouraged just this very organic style of reading where somebody would riff off of another poet, okay? And pretty much everybody just kept their eyes on everybody else as to who was going to go next, because you never really knew.
Right.
And so I often would find myself writing to just that fluid of a scene, so that it wasn't thematically based as much as it was trying to bring in maybe some historical literature references, art references, music references, so that you could riff off of just about anybody in the room.
So Poetry Slam, what you have 3 minutes and 10 seconds to do your best and impress an audience. How does it work?
Yeah, well, we used to, when I was involved in slam, because I am retired since 2002, but when I was actively involved in it, we would recruit judges from the audience. We wanted, a fair representation of all ages, all social strata, so to speak. We'd get 5 judges. And I would instruct the judges to kind of look for, this, score lower on, say, an overuse of profanity, You know, profanity is fine. It sometimes actually helps get the message apart, but if it's just every other line, you know, you might want to score that lower, so that we are instructing not only the audience as to not what's good and bad, but what's more popular and what's less popular, because the whole point is also to kind of bring what we're doing here to other cities and see what they're doing, what they're seeing, and yeah, it just becomes a huge melting pot.
Right.
But yeah, the competition aspect was very exciting for some poets who got up there, but others could care less about that. They just wanted the A, exposure, and B, just the, you know, the education that they were getting by being part of this whole scene.
Sure, and some folks turned off too by this idea that you can score somebody's creation, somebody's art piece, right?
The idea of scoring was to get away from people who, I don't remember if we had cell phones back then. I don't think we did. But that's the, you know, that's the whole idea of people standing at the mic, hardly ever looking up and engaging with your audience and reading off of a phone, or back then off of a, you know, a notepad. Was, you know, you can do that, but you're going to score a lot lower.
5 points for content, 5 points for performance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Do both, write well, present well, right?
Yeah.
I would say probably for most judges, the content and the sincerity of the work.
Yeah.
If it was coming from a place of grief, that the poet was being vulnerable and being sincere about the world and the way that poet saw the world.
Right.
And then there was always a score drift, right? You would have, at the beginning, there would be just this fabulous poem, but it would be scored 6.8, you know, 7.2. And then by the end of the night, the judges are throwing 10s because the audience is influencing too much.
Absolutely,
you know?
right. Yeah, so we would have to do all kinds of averaging with the scores in the first round versus the scores in the second round, and you know, having judges who had some experience was helpful as well. So when it was actually choosing people for a team, as opposed to just you know, an open slam.
Yeah. You ask folks what's the most terrifying thing you can do, and if public speaking is on there, they'll check that box. So it's a brave thing to get up to the microphone.
Sure. Yeah. Respect to everybody who takes a mic,
Yeah. Do you write from a place of total sincerity, especially if you're writing kind of a memoir, a personal narrative style poem?
No, not, you know, I mean, I would like to think some of it is that way, but a lot of my poetry, I can actually read one today, is, you know, sketches. You know, sketches of characters that intrigue me, and I want to know more about them, so I create them on the page, because there may not be a chance to actually meet them. So,
will you read a poem for us?
Okay, sure. I'm going to wet my whistle here.
Are you reading from Summation?
Yes. So I wanted to. We have a mentorship program at the Escondido Municipal Gallery where my reading takes place, and so we have high school students who come and intern for us, and last year we had a student who, when I first met this person, was definitely her pronouns were her, she, but she was suffering from gender dysphoria and would shift genders on us infrequently, but enough so that it, you know, became an issue for us having to realize what she was going through, what they were going through. So I wrote this poem. We write in Summation, we write to artwork, and the piece of art by the artist Janet Quito of Escondido was called Blue Leaves, and it was you know, a vase with blue leaves, eucalyptus leaves on it. But I wrote this to let people who do suffer from gender dysphoria know that they're seen and heard. Mm-hmm. And I know very little about it other than having met this person. So yeah, I just created this story about them, okay? Blue leaves just after telling us all that she won't be coming back, how he's kind of fed up with all the tragic ironies of this place, in which they find themselves no longer able to cope. I mean, what more is there to say? I belong about as much as those gum trees they're pulling out of the earth around the lake. Am I right? I'm thinking I just got to hit the road, find some place that isn't putting me on display like some freaking museum piece. Careful now, it might break. And right now the planets feel all aligned for me, and no, I haven't checked the ephemeris or anything, I just know. Yeah, that's her story, shouts a guy in the corner we don't know all that well. And he's sticking to it, we echo back in unison, full of raucous, loving laughter. No need for panic, we all know that each time Blue leaves, they don't stay gone long. Indeed, they're often in and out of our lives, here only for a season, then they vanish like stars in the vast brightness of the sunrise.
The connection between art, poetry, and your subject, right? The real person who you want to a certain degree, get to know in the way that you express yourself in the poem. Yeah. When you're editing, are you looking for poems like this? Poems that connect to the art? Is it an absolute need that there has to be some connection, understandable connection to the artwork? How do you pick where these poems go?
It's almost instinctual, you know. There's just, there may be, you get 5 poems for an artwork and you have a room for 3 based on the lengths that have come in and the pages you've allocated. Yeah. And so you're choosing off of instinct almost, you know. You're reading each one as you're looking at the artwork. Then you might get 5 poems for a painting where none of them actually fit. And then that artwork, we may want to commission a poem for it from somebody out in the community who didn't submit to Summation. Or we might even just leave it out of the book because, you know, we just didn't find the right poem for that artwork. It just didn't happen.
Do the artists, is that all in-house? Do the artists get to see before the anthology comes out which poems are juxtaposed?
I see what you're saying. Well, they would if when they get their proof, their galley proof. Yeah, they'll see. They get a galley proof, so yeah, and they do actually look forward to that day where they can see what got written. The poem that I just read, Janet Keto had come up to me. I had seen her at a function just days after sending her galley proof, and she's got, I really don't understand that poem at all, what you were saying. And I said, you know what, that's okay. Yeah. That's fine, you know. Yeah. But, you know, this is what was born from your artwork. Yeah. And I went off of the title more than I did the painting, which is fine. You know, sometimes it's the title that speaks to us way more than the actual physical art.
Yeah, I actually read in the gallery once, and someone in the audience after my 3rd or 4th poem said, I don't get that one. It's like, all right.
It's almost a badge of honor.
That's right. Yeah. Others might have, you know what I mean? So the characters, you've been at this for 30 years, right? And you've seen poets come and go. You've seen the same poets in the community still publishing and reading. What about our community kind of stands out to you as the consistency of the folks who've been going to readings for years? The hosts like you have been doing readings for 30-odd years, right?
That's a tough one. The first thing that came to mind was that people who leave San Diego because out of necessity, perhaps a job takes them away or you know, an event in their family, still stay connected to the community here. And so, yeah, you know, where we bring them back, you know, at the various readings as guest features as often as possible. So Lizzie comes to mind, who had to go back to LA after her dad passed. But yet, you know, she attends readings down here a good 5 or 6 times a year.
Lizzie Wan was one of the most emulated poets. Her voice, the way she would present at the microphone. I remember a period of like sort of the Lizzie Wanification of voice at the microphone. And it was one of those things where you would listen to her and her voice was so buttery and she was so expressive in her poetry, extraordinary. And then the hospice bubble, she wrote the hospice bubble for her dad.
Right.
And that is a tremendous book.
A hospice bubble. Slight as breath, delicate as onion skin, tenuous as a temp job, devastating as death. Yet still protected, reinforced with family, strong with love, everlasting with memories, affirming as life. Dad's bubble was comfort and peace, his siblings' prayer circles and storytelling, country music and cheeseburgers. We were his devotees, our only goals, shield him against pain, shepherd his last breath with grace.
For me and a lot of poets in town, you and Lizzie Wan were a team.
Right, yeah. Going back to the slam again, you know, Lizzie had to leave, not physically leave San Diego, but she wanted to get on a slam team, so she was forced to go up to Laguna Beach. That was the next closest one geographically.
Right.
And we thought, you know, no, we gotta have a slam here in San Diego for people don't have to go out up to Orange County or whatever. But eventually Lizzie ended up co-hosting with me because you know, she had a lot of experience and I needed help, you know. So we had grown so large. This was the days where we had the Urban Grind, and then I think maybe the next night of the week was Claire de Lune, both happening kind of in the same, you know, North Park, University Heights corridor there, and yeah, a lot of people came out to both.
Yeah, and we've all had help along the way, you know. You learn from Lizzie, hosts learn from you guys. Do you have any poets who you read and consider to be mentor poets? Anybody who you love that kind of gets the juices flowing for you? Like who would you, like if you were going to recommend a poet to writers who want to write more, write better?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you would bring that question up because we were just, I brought a friend down from Escondido with me today, Gail, who was kind of regretting getting started in writing so late in life, you know, writing poetry. And I said, you know, while we're here at the library, go look up Amy Clampett downstairs on the 4th floor, whose first book was published when she was 82,
Right.
you know? So, you know.
I gotta say, right, like sports, the back's gonna go, the knees, right, the shoulders. You can write well into the twilight.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely, it's a game that can be always played. Plus, it keeps your mind sharp.
Yes.
Organizing your thoughts in that way.
Yeah, way more productive than doing crosswords. Nothing wrong with crossword puzzles, but yeah, if we could write haiku instead of doing crosswords every morning.
Yeah,
so,
kind of thinking about the syllables, right? Thinking about the sounds and structure.
Sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of poets, I've read quite a few bios, and a lot of writers, when they get to this point where they're like, all right, I got to do this. This has got to be my habit, my daily. And these writers start really saying to that to themselves at 40, 50, you know, later on.
Yeah.
Plus the time comes, right?
Yeah.
You suddenly have a little more time to get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I felt like I had already, you know, was kind of getting up there in years when I first went to Chris's reading at the Wiki Up. You know, I was already 40, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Did you bring a mentor poem or anything that you'd like to read
You know
from
what,
another poet?
When I was in when I was in high school, you know, there's got to be more to poetry than just Paul Simon. I got to thinking, right? So I did go to the library, and I just went through the shelves, and I found very few poets back then that our small library in Virginia, Northern Virginia, was carrying. To then, you know, but I didn't give up. I kept looking, and I ran across Mark Van Doren. His book that we had in the stacks that day was That Shining Place. And as soon as I read it, yeah, I knew that this is what I wanted to strive towards. So I'll do Mark's poem. Mark Van Doren was a former poet laureate. He's no longer with us, but this is the poem from the book, from where the title of the book comes from. Slowly, slowly wisdom gathers golden dust in the afternoon. Somewhere between the sun and me, sometimes so near that I can see, yet never settling late or soon. Would that it did, and a rug of gold spread west of me a mile or more, not large, but so that I might lie face up between the earth and sky, and know what none has known before. Then I would tell as best I could the secrets of that shining place, the web of the world, how thick, how thin, how firm, with all things folded in, how ancient and how full of grace.
You were in high school and you chose this poem about looking out into the world and being part of the world, right? Looking deeply.
Yeah, well, and the world didn't have to be a sad place,
right?
Because I was coming from a sad place. Yeah, it was full of hope. So I memorized it, and it's just been my mantra my whole life. Yeah.
You've been saying this poem over and over again, huh?
Yeah. Every night before I go to sleep.
Your memory, like when you memorized, did you have you continued in terms of keeping poems inside? Poems, not just poems that kind of carry you in tough times or remind you that it is a beautiful world.
Absolutely, yeah.
But is it also kind of one of those things that has to do with memory, and that you keep poems alive in there to keep the mind active?
No, I mean like, I don't know. No, it's a spiritual thing. Yeah. I gave up. Now I lay me down to sleep, and switched off to to poets that I would like to emulate. And I do this at the reading also. The monthly reading up at the gallery in Escondido. I always try to open each segment with a poem from someone of note, someone to whom we can all emulate.
Yeah, and you think a direction of positivity, right? Shine a light, or at very least know that the world is a beautiful place in spite of what's happening, what's going on all around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tough times and grief. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try to spotlight poets who are, suppressed where they might live, like right now in Belarus and in Russia.
Yeah.
They have something to say, and we've got the internet, and if I can help spread their word, I will.
And you mostly do your searching online to find the folks.
Yeah.
Who would you suggest from those places? Or
a woman named Valzhnaya Mort. Which is interesting because Mort in English, our association is death. But she writes from a real hopeful place. Yeah. She's Belarusian. I can't think of the young Russian poet who was arrested and imprisoned. About a year ago today, when the war started with Ukraine.
Yeah. Are you sharing these poems at the reading? You're doing that sharing at the reading, but do you have a core, a group? Is there like kind of a meeting of the minds, or folks a generation who you gather with and share with? Or is it mostly through the readings that you connect to? Yeah. How many readings do you guys do?
Okay, so we have 12 shows or exhibitions a year at the gallery, and so the first Saturday of every month, the artwork comes off of the walls or off of the pedestals, if it's freestanding sculptures or whatever, and then suddenly the gallery is empty, and we take it over the first Sunday of every month. Right. And we have, usually a guest author, someone from the community here in San Diego, or I look outside the region, and I've brought poets down from as far away as Buffalo, New York, with Shannon Tate Jonas. We have a poet coming down from Oakland in April, Joshua Peralta. So I try to look outside the community as well. So we have a guest author for the first hour, and then we have an open reading where everyone is invited to come, not only read their own work, but maybe they haven't written anything new, or they have never written a poem, but they're still invited to come up to the mic and read us something that I try to keep anthologies around so that people can find a poem to read.
Right. Do you pick sometimes the features from those open mic readings? Do you find folks to feature?
Yeah.
Someone gets up to the microphone and just brings down the house? And
it does happen. It absolutely happens. Yeah. And that comes from, again, the days of slam, where we were having these intercity regional events and, you know, trying to bring a slam team down to one of our readings here and to let people know, hey, you know, not only are these guys, these people good, but they're also going to, you know, they're also going to be at an open reading, not just a slam. And you can actually read for them to hear you. You know?
Yeah, you know, one of my favorite readings was up in the meadow up there at the Henry Miller Library
Henry
in
Miller,
Big Sur.
yeah.
Yeah, and that was all of California?
That
All
was
cities- all
California?
cities in
No,
California?
you know what? It was regional.
Was it regional?
So it's West Coast Regional.
West Coast
Yeah,
Regional,
because
that's
I
right.
remember the Seattle team always impressing me
Yeah.
back then, yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful place to go. The Henry Miller Library, just to be there and to be surrounded by poets. That big stage, isn't there like a big pirate ship or something up there on the grass, if I remember correctly?
You know, it was. I remember the wooden plank stage.
Yeah,
I
wooden plank
remember
stage,
Jimmy
yeah.
Jazz pretty much dancing all over it while he's, you know, reciting
Doing
his
his
poem.
thing.
He's just one of those guys that will not stand at the mic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the San Diego Poetry Slam now, especially with Rudy Francisco, won the National Poetry Slam. What is the individuals? Rudy Francisco took individuals, and he's become a force, a presence as a representative of San Diego, right? And Poetry Slam in general, and all of that would not have been possible without the work that you put in founding Slam in San Diego. So the city and where it's at now, at its origins, it started with you guys.
Well, shout out to Jennifer Guerin one more time.
Jennifer Guerin,
That was
Lizzie.
her vision,
Yeah.
and I said, okay, well, I can do this.
Yeah. So thank you, Robert. I'm glad that we had this opportunity to sit down and chat.
It was fun, yeah.
And
It was
again, you're a total inspiration. I really appreciate everything that you've done for the city and giving people a place and a space to perform their poems.
And
in
props to you,
paintings, know.
props to you, San Diego Art Institute, going back to those days.
Back in the day, right?
Yeah,
Oh, in editing, San Diego Poetry Annual, the Entertainment and Arts Guild, as a regional editor, you receive poems not just for Summation, but also for the San Diego Poetry Annual, and you can be found all over the web, right? Just look up Robert. And
so EscondidoArts.org.
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 Gotcha. And SanDiegoPoetryAnnual.com. Thanks to San Diego Snapcast, great job, and to the Public Library for giving us a space. This is kind of our headquarters.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're going to be getting out a little bit. Season 2, here we go.
All right.